look, things are happening. This domestic debt exchange program is not going to go anywhere. And the deadline was extended. We heard the announcement from government yesterday. Now, here's how minority in parliament has reacted. They say they are convinced that the country is in deep economic crisis. They're expecting government to engage much better than they have so far. This is what Haruna Idrisu, the minority leader, said to Evans Mensah yesterday when he explained that government needs to admit that the debt exchange program is failing. They should not rely on constant extensions of engagement. They believe that the solution lies in the suspension of the whole initiative. And Haruna Idrisu says they are ready to elevate the issue to a legal, constitutional matter. Let's hear him.
We are strongly convinced that our country is in deep economic crisis, and therefore the president needs to engage and engage well rather than admit publicly that the debt exchange initiative is failing. They have resorted to constant announcement of extensions. The solution doesn't lie in extensions of it. The solution lies in a suspension of the whole initiative. And we are even beginning to elevate this matter to a legal constitutional matter as to whether or not the Minister of Finance, Somoto, by himself as an individual, can undo what the Sovereign Parliament of Ghana has done pursuant to Article 181 and 5 of the Constitution. All those loans, all those bonds, all those instruments, their terms and conditions were approved by Parliament, including that of domestic bonds. Contractual relationships have been entered into. How can the finance minister arrogate to himself the mandate to do this even without information to Parliament or with its prior approval?
Yeah, so that was Haruna Idrisu speaking yesterday on Top Story with Evans Mensah, making his position or the position of the minority clear that this is not something they accept in any form that it has so far been presented in. They reject the whole thing and are willing to make a legal matter of it, to seek interpretation of the Constitution as to whether what government is doing is right. We've already heard from the majority leader, Oseche Mensah, who says that Parliament knows nothing of this domestic debt exchange program. So here we are again. Both sides of the floor pretty much saying the same thing or echoing the same sentiment, but not really yet declaring that they are going to work together on it.
I actually think that they basically gave an indication to work together on it when they met the team from Senor Hosi and Co.
Yeah.
For the first time, I heard both majority and minority say that this is going to negatively affect the middle class. That it's going to actually worsen the plight of people who are currently really under several pressures from this economy. In fact, he said it was dangerous to actually touch that grouping because of all the implications for it going into the future. And it's not shocking, right? I've heard a banter of a sort between the majority chief whip, Frank Anodompre, and Gabi Asare-Chidako on Twitter. First, the majority chief whip stated categorically that it's unconscionable for anybody to pursue this in the inclusion of the individual bondholders. Then, when Gabi had actually stated a lot of things that are happening and why people ought to accept it, and that it's more dangerous and that people will be worse off and all of that. When he stated so, the response from Anodompre to him was that, listen, yes, that's why in the first place you should have engaged. So it appears Parliament, like many of us, were still kept in the dark. And Kojo, we've been asking for details of this matter right from the beginning. The people who have been on the other side have been demanding engagement. And you see, they did not start, none of the groups started by saying we outrightly reject. If you recall.
Yeah.
Even the collective investment schemes that came out to say that we outrightly reject, they said, no. We have revised the position. Our only interest is to engage and see what best we can do. So it appeared right from the beginning, the only grouping that was unwilling to come to the table is the people who put together this document in the first place. who put us where we are in the first place. And I'm insisting it was because the elephant in the room is, what is government willing to give more? And when you put the people on the table, they will say, shift a little bit, cut back on your expenditure, so that I can take some of this money from those areas, so that we can use it to cushion the people. Because I'm so sure, rather than getting free water or free electricity, people will prefer to have their bonds being delivered so they can pay for those things. They do not want your blanket freebies as a general solution to the problem. So that was what was discussed right from the beginning. I know that also there was some indirect, of course, government has purported this to be some voluntary one. But if you are told you're on your own, we will default. And the first time in history, somebody is boldly telling people that we will default if you do not actually take up our alternative plan. And the other threat, and you see, these are massive threats, that the economy will collapse. No Ghanaian want to see this economic collapse. So the indirect coercion things that they used were all supposed to be helping the people say that, okay, we agree, let's move forward with it. Until they reached the point they realized Labour was unwilling to move. Then let's tackle pensions first. Still, others were not being engaged. In fact, some were even asked to present alternative proposals, and they were never engaged beyond that. So you bring it about, they reject it, but they don't tell you anything. All that they mean is that regardless of what happens, we are going forward with this.
Churchill, yesterday, Martin Kpebu and Senyo Hosi gave us quite a lot to think about when they, voiced their positions on our show. Martin Kpebu talked about how he actually believes that this action is unconstitutional. He read sections of the Constitution that he felt that this completely violates. Senyo Hosi, on his part, was pointing out the fact that at least 2 of the 4 bonds affected by this domestic debt exchange program should have absolutely no issue paying out to the holders, and that by automatic process that money should already be there. And he advises holders of those bonds that, listen, you don't actually have to do anything. You don't have to agree to anything. Your money will be given you. How close to the reality are these 2 positions? That one, what government is doing violates the Constitution or flies in the face of the Constitution. And 2, people don't have to agree. They'll still get their money.
Well, let me leave the legal aspect to the lawyers to deal with. But there's what you call tax anticipated notes and grant anticipation loans notes. Simply this. So, for instance, I could go for a loan and say that there's some tax that I've attached to it. And so once the tax is paid, I will give you your money. I could also go for a loan. For instance, if a municipal assembly or a metro assembly wants to go for a loan, which they normally would term as municipal bonds, they can say, they have some grants that comes yearly, as in common fund. So based on that, I can pay you this money because I expect these funds yearly. But for the tax, as long as we're paying the tax, there's money. And so you can understand Senyor's point. I mean, government cannot say I'm adding S-line and all of that to it, because these bonds are attached to the energy sector levies that we pay. And once we have energy sector levies accruing to the state, there is no way the state can say, I will not pay you, because you did your calculation, okay? So about the 30 billion that you're expecting, I'll check the figures again, that we're expecting in the year should be able to take care of, 1, our energy sector debts, and 2, the bonds that we floated in that respect. So that's understood. The challenge is that a lot of people don't even know the bonds they purchased. So some people have purchased bonds, they go, they get the bonds. They don't really know the bonds that they've purchased. And that's where the challenge starts from. And so it's important for the people to know. And the Dachi bond, for instance, is also from Get Fund. 2.5%. You will get the money. You did the projections and said, this is how much I'm going to get yearly from Get Fund. Okay? So if this is what I'm going to get yearly, then it means that I would be able to pay you, because these are the inflows. I would get them all the time. And once I get them, and that's why, see, you're looking at the time value of money and you're saying, well, how about I get that money now Because if I were to wait for 5 years, the cost would go up.
Yeah.
And so let me borrow now and then spread it over the period. And you're saying, even if I add all the interest, it would not be the projected amount maybe 5 years or 10 years from now.
Right.
So having said that, that's the truth. I do not think that government will default in the payment of individual bonds.
Let me ask, what does the budget say? In the budget, has government said that we will spend this much paying ESLA bonds?
Well, I mean,
when we we are expecting this much revenue and we will spend this much paying ESLA
budget projects the payment of interest payments of 31 billion Ghana cedis domestically.
bonds. Right.
Okay, so the budget will tell you how much you're going to get from ESLA, but the budget also tells you the amount of money that you're paying, interest payments. So out of the 60, billion, 52 billion interest payments, 31 billion are domestic interest payments, and that's captured in the budget.
Okay.
And that's why the analysis have been made that Raymond, they say you don't have money, but you've made provisions for this. So what interest are you going to pay? I mean, what interest are you going to pay? After all, I mean, if you have treasury bills, when it's time, you can roll over. It's still debt, maturing debt anyway. But as you roll over, you're incurring more debts. But let me get to then the other point. So I don't think that government would default, particularly when it comes to individual bonds. This is what I see. The indirect coercion that Raymond talks about. So government has gotten, and I mean, they're creating fear. So you would see we have to suffer. So you probably would say, oh, if government says it's going to default, then why don't I settle for this? It's voluntary. It's voluntary. But then they're making it look like if you don't take it, well, we will default. And who wants to lose all his money? What the government hasn't done is this. When e-levy was so much of importance to government, they went around the whole country and solicited views.
That was also arguably after the fact. They had already announced it
Oh,
in the
yes,
budget.
they have. But at least after the fact, they went around the country. After the fact, are they going around the country? Don't just say we're going to deal with leaders of bondholders. Okay? You can also get an extended group of bondholders meeting government. So there will be series of engagements, not just one. Look, in the Argentina example, when they tried it wasn't working, they spent between 4 and 5 months engaging. Why are we just giving deadlines?
There are those who argue that, look, government has their creditors over a barrel. If you look at the Finance Ministry's website, they have frequently asked questions about this domestic debt exchange program. And one of the questions is that what happens if I don't opt in or I don't voluntarily participate? And the answer there is so interesting. They say, oh, well, I mean, you can choose not to. We can't stop you from choosing not to. But we could take punitive measures against you, including regulatory measures. That's there on their own website.
Yeah.
That they can use regulation to punish you for not, opting into a voluntary scheme. Okay? So the question is this. Look, government has a certain attitude that people don't seem to like. But the question is, if they have you over a barrel, is it even logical for them to negotiate? If they feel they don't have to because they got you, why must they negotiate?
Kojo, the point I will make is simply this. Part of the reason government even extended this is also a strong push from the banks.
Yeah.
After the meeting was it on Friday or something? There was a strong push from the banks. Because the reality is it is going to affect the banks. And I am just thinking aloud and saying, government should have scenarios. You just don't get up and say, I'm doing this, and that's the end of it.
Where is the stress test?
Yes, I mean, you should have scenarios. You say, if I do this, this is the impact on the economy. If I take the next action, this will be the impact on the economy. If I do that one, that will be the impact. So the stress test is very important. I want to see that. Look, the engagements should be as transparent as possible. Doing all of these things in the dark do not help anybody. Because let all of us know. And once we know, we'll be better placed to engage. But when you come to me and present your facts, which are not available to me, you're presenting your facts to me. Make your facts available to me. Then I make my facts available to you. I open my books to you and I show you these are the reasons why you'd have to pay me. I mean, I asked a question the other time. I mean, what measures have been put in place for the individual bondholders? We have the Financial Stability Fund, for instance. So, assuming I have to, pay my school fees and I don't have the money, my school fees is due, I don't have the money. What do I do? Where do I go to, for instance? Today, interest payments are about 30%. Do I go and borrow? I don't even have the money. So, and I was asking an official from the Ministry of Finance who said, I haven't really thought about that one.
But why not? You thought about it for
Exactly.
the corporate bondholders.
Exactly.
Because perhaps their initial agreement or thinking was that individual bondholders were never going to be
We're not going to be
touched.
part of it.
So the minute they made the decision
Yeah.
to include individual bondholders, where was the planning? Where was the thinking? Where was the stress testing that you talk about?
Yes.
Right? You came up with someone came up with the idea, probably in a meeting. Okay, now we have to bring in the people we
Because we
exempted.
remove pension
All right,
funds.
then how are we doing it? Did nobody answer that question?
Kojo, I agree with you, but right from the beginning on this whole conversation, we've been kept in the dark and we've been complaining. Right from we'll go to IMF. You remember the conversation?
Yeah.
We'll go, we will not go. We are not even considering it. It's not part of the conversations we are having. And then we settle on we'll go to the IMF. Then we ask the question, this our post-COVID recovery plan that we've been talking about. Where is the plan? Then we are intimating to government that there's a certain level of debt restructuring required. The indication from government was that we needed to do debt sustainability analysis. The bank has not done their own, so we are also waiting and all of that. At that time in the Republic of Ghana, it was happening. We were discussing it. Government was considering the options on the table. So all the best brains in this country, from government's perspective, worked on what we could put together as our best plan forward. Then we proceeded to now go forward with the alternatives. You see, you remember, when we asked this question about stress test, they tell us that, in fact, in the document that announced the Financial Stability Fund, they told us clearly that they've done stress test. That is why they put in some specific things for the banking sector, including review of the capital adequacy ratio and other things. Then they moved it forward. So what would have been expected was that since you did a stress test, you would have taken into consideration all the scenarios that if we tomorrow include individual bondholders, what's the alternative? What's the option forward? What are we going to do to cushion the people? Then the third point, if we decide to even include treasury bills, which is a likelihood in all forms, as you have indicated yourself, what are the alternatives on the table? I mean, yes, you might think you are stressed in the process of putting together this, but that's why you are there. We are in a position where the people appear to lack more ideas going forward and are unwilling to receive any from anywhere else too. So it's a very tight corner. Presuming you know it all, presuming you have all the answers, and yet at every turn, it is exposed as having massive gaps. Gaps that makes it very obvious that you do not know what you're about. And you see, let's not even pretend that it's the massive complaints from the people that pushes government to do some of this things alone. It was obvious to anybody that there will be pushback on the pension funds. It was obvious. This is a country that's just recovering. Let's not forget that we finished or concluded just around 2020 the financial sector reform plan. We just finished that process. Many of these banks were just deemed to be on the right path to recovery. So when you drop this massive thing on them, with a 15 billion, leeway, when we are talking about some danger exposure to the level of 68 billion, how have you resolved the problem? And whose problem are you resolving first?
You know, it's interesting. You remember the 12-point measures outlined by the president at the end of October when he did the fellow Ghanaians, and how we all lamented the lack of clarity and detail to those 12 points. Well, now a few of those points that were not clarified, it seems now that it's because there were no detail. Look, improve national resources and liquidity by raising revenues from 13% to 18 to 20% of GDP. That was point 5 of the 12 points. Have you heard any detail about how they intend to increase revenue from 13 to 18 to 20%? which areas they are going to increase that revenue in?
Apart from the bit that they put in the budget, which rarely required a lot more fleshing to, because of course those questions consistently
We
come
were
up.
expecting the budget to give us these details.
Yes.
But no, it was just another expression of general intent. So today, if I ask the finance ministry, how are you going to increase your revenue from 13 to 20%? Which areas are you going to, tap into to do that? And how does that affect your intention of dipping your hand into my savings to fund your expenditure? Does anyone have an answer to that question? Or must we simply sit back and whatever idea someone comes up with and announces it to the world, we all then just chase it, off a cliff?
See, we are not against government being in a hurry to get an IMF deal, because all of this is yet at one main point.
But what's the plan? What's the plan?
But it appears
are we not
that
supposed to buy into a
every
plan?
level we are exposed as not thinking hard and fast enough about the issues. That's what the problem is. At every level, we appear to be so much in a hurry that a lot of deeper thinking is not happening. And the difficulty is that you might be doing enough or doing your best, but your best is not enough to fix the problem. You just need to open up. There's enough resource in the Republic of Ghana intellectually to help you deal with the problems. Tap into all of them. Bring all of them on the same table. And stop this one-man show that ends up nowhere. That only ends up with extensions and excuses and all of the other things that we are doing today. We become almost like the butt of all jokes when it comes to our countries are failing and debts are not working in countries and virtually everything is happening on a different wavelength. We need to, more than ever now, have a united front. But the people who should rally everybody around that table are only consistently interested in consultations on paper.
Look, having said that, and I'm just trying to get you some figures. I'll get them shortly. Now, having said that also, I've been monitoring a lot of the conversation on all of this, and I started this morning by saying, yes, let us get to the table. And in getting to the table, we must have alternatives.
Yeah.
Where are the alternatives? Government must first of all make its alternatives known to all of us. We would debate it, and if we accept it, that's the end. Then that's the way to go. 2, all those who want to lead this country should be telling us how they intend to go about this. In fact, when I said that, someone said one Ahiaji, Mr. Ahiaji is also, sent a message that says, in fact, they should publish it so that we would look at it and debate it.
Yeah.
So on that
this
note,
affects us.
So on that note, Alan John Kwejo Tremantin, who launched the Great Transformational Plan, GTP, included in there is macroeconomic stability, new agriculture revolution. He should tell us what his plans are when it comes to the domestic debt exchange program. Dr. Owusu Efri Yakoto, who has resigned as our Greek minister, should be telling us how he intends to do this. Publish it too. Now, John Dramani Mahama, former president, seeking to be president again, should be telling us how he intends to do this. Then Dr. Kwabena Dufo, former finance minister, former governor of the Republic of Ghana, seeking to become president on the ticket of the NDC, should also be telling us. Kwabena Japan should be telling us. Joe Gatti, don't be going around and engaging party members and think that that's the end of it. Because this time, look, you must engage the larger population of Ghana so that your party will know that there's a buy-in into your ideas. So that when they are voting for a winner, a candidate who can win once and for all. Let us begin to engage. And so let's not even make it 31st January. No. Government should stop this, because the next time you extend it will be a disgrace. It will be like the SIM card re-registration. Always extending deadlines. Let us suspend it now and engage in, further consultations. That's the way to go. That is the way to go. But you see, I'm going to share with you ESLA transfers. You make your point. I just pick the ESLA, proceeds and the Get Fund proceeds and look at the bond amounts in there and find out whether government cannot pay.
Since you actually mentioned ESLA, at what point in time in the history of the Republic of Ghana we realized that we rarely have energy sector debt, we sought to put together taxes, which is really what it is. It's a tax mechanism. The Levies Act, somewhere in 2015, to fix the problem in the energy sector. Kojo, we have moved it from a solution to fixing the problem to energy sector, and now as a debt problem on its own. How? So we devised a means to fix a debt problem, i.e., collect taxes to pay for debt.
Anywhere else in the world.
And now it has become another debt concern.
Yes.
That we consistently are being asked to pay. Oh, no, really? It's part of the problem that we have to resolve generally.
Anywhere else in the world, such a catastrophic shift of goalpost would be enough for heads to roll. You set out to do A. Now it has become an extra burden, an extra problem for us.
In fact, some of us think that it's not an extra burden and we are forcing it into it. That's another argument that can come up.
Yeah, but that's how they are. Yes, that's how they are pushing it.
Yeah.
Like it's an extra burden, an extra problem for us to solve. The solution is now a problem.
Yeah.
Right? Anywhere else in the world, people will resign for that.
Well,
But here in Ghana, no, rather you who are pointing it out, you are the problem.
Yeah.
You are rather the destabilizing factor. Why wouldn't you allow us to fail in peace?
When we talk about alternatives, and you see, listen, I've complained about how sometimes we do the politics in our part of the world. I know that people have submitted alternatives to the Ministry of Finance. Why don't they publish all of them? Let's all have since it's a collective problem anyway, because now it's moved from just the ideas of a few people. It's no longer the Osafo Mafus and the Charles Dubois and the Foriates with over 80 or about 80 years experience in the market space who are actually solving the problem.
Okay.
It has become a collective headache.
Oh, God.
So why don't you publish all of these alternatives that people have submitted to you so that we collectively look at the problem and fix it?
Kojo,
Yeah.
so let's do this. I told you I was going to bring the figures out. So I am looking at the 2023 budget, Appendix 3B.
Right.
And this is Government of Ghana telling you its sources of revenue. So these are not my words. Every figure I put out is from the budget.
Right.
So, and Kojo, I'm sure your math is good, so you can do the addition for me. ESLA proceeds, 5.5 billion.
Okay.
So just make it 5.5.
Yeah.
Get fund levy, 4.6 billion. This added will give you 10.1 billion. Let me do my own calculation.
Don't worry, I'm on it.
10.1 billion. Now, let me get to my next angle. Now, this is our debt exchange document. Now, Ghana, this is the ESLA bonds. So, maturity date 2024, the one that's maturing in 2024 is 711 million.
Okay.
The one that matures in 2027 is 2.5 billion. Now, how much proceeds are we expecting from ESLA? 5.5 billion. 5.5 billion. Okay. Then let's get to the Dachi bond. So I've told you that, so ESLA is interest that we have to pay.
Yeah.
Because the bonds are not maturing in 2023. Those that are affected are not maturing in 2023. Okay. So when you say all of it, no, hold on a minute. Then you go to the Dachi bond. Maturity date 2025, 169 million. 2027, 1.8 billion. And 2031, 626 million. Total 2.6 billion. How much did I say we're expecting from Get Fund Levy this year? 4.4 billion.
4.4 billion, yeah.
We can pay.
Yeah.
We can pay the interest on these bonds. And we can pay the others. Individual bonds. Let us pay.
Hey, this matter. Anyway, look, if government has their own way, they will dip their hands into your savings to fund their expenditure. If they have their own way, that's what they will do. That's the plan they proposed. And you've heard Gabia Sayo Shridakun saying that there is no viable alternative to that plan. You will have to foot the bill if they have their own way. Add that to inflation, add that to your depreciating cedi, add that to the fact that your salary is not going anywhere, add that to the fact that you may actually find yourself out of a job if you happen to be working in the wrong sector and the economy pinches. Add that to the fact that if you own a business, you are now running after fewer customers who have less spending power. Add that to the fact that if you are a contractor, it is now even harder to get contracts because government is not really able to pay. Add all of those things together, and you are looking at a very, very difficult year ahead. And on top of all that, your nest egg that you have already worked for, government wants to dip its hand into it. So this year, Nankasa.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to wrap up unless
But
there's...
yes, there's something I
something
want to share. So Kofi Bento sent this to me that says, Kofi Bento of Imani.
Oh, yes.
Says, Haruna has a solid point in law. It cannot be that an act of parliament can be altered this significantly by the minister. Again, serious consultation would have dealt with this. Who is advising the ministry? And having said that, Kojo,
Having said that,
there are too many things we can cut in the budget. In fact, what I will do from tomorrow, I will be sharing with you all the line items in the budget that we can cut and still survive in this country. Because we are talking about alternatives. So we are starting the alternatives here.
Yeah.
And we are inviting others to also join in the alternatives. And so today we are saying suspend it. Let's engage in the alternatives. By the time we are done with the engagements, you will know that we have alternatives and you know that we can go around this.
indeed.